Hurry.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a fire.
EMS assignment, unknown injury accident.
Yes, she is breathing normally. Yes, she is. Okay.
Highway 179 and Bell Rock Boulevard. Highway 179 and Bell Rock Boulevard. Bravo response.
Yes, I have a man down in the driveway.
206, brush fire threatening. Engine 11, engine 41, ladder 11, water tender 11, battalion 3.
You are about to share in the retelling of events that are testimony to the dedication of many people in the Sedona area. People who cared enough 40 years ago to sit down and plan a way to help their neighbors. It was more than providing emergency medical service and firefighting assistance. It was a way for those that lived here to truly become a community. Hello, I'm Scott Alvord, Fire Chief of the Sedona Fire District. When that first group got together, they were already a loosely knit organization of individuals trying to help one another in emergency situations. They had a vision of Sedona that realized the need for a group dedicated to the prevention of and rapid response to life and property threatening situations through emergency medical and fire suppression efforts. If those words sound familiar to you, it's because they are part of today's mission statement. Obviously, they are as important now in 1997 as they were in 1957. Some of those original members and their family members are still an active part of Sedona. This video honors them as well as all the many who followed and continue to serve Sedona Fire District and our community.
Since 1957, caring citizens of a growing community, neighbors, children, spouses, maybe even you, have joined hands to provide 40 years of community service. They've responded to calls for help during all hours of the night and day. They've left the warmth of their homes, the responsibility of their jobs, missed their children's school plays and baseball games, yet they rarely complain.
They've cried together, laughed together, and worked together. Members of the Sedona Fire District are a family, dedicated to protecting families. Nestled at the mouth of Oak Creek Canyon in north-central Arizona, Sedona is well known for its visual grandeur. Before the tourist boom hit Sedona, it was a quiet little town. Even then, however, concerns about fire protection gave birth to a volunteer fire department that is almost as much of a gem in the community as are the Red Rocks.
To understand the strength of an organization like SFD, one has to look at its history.
I believe I joined the fire department at the same time Bill Eder did, and I'm not sure. I know it was officially formed in, I think, 57, but I well remember with Bill and Ray Steele and I think Wes Jackson and Don Hole and Tommy Frost sitting around in Tom Frost's living room deciding how we're going to form this fire district.
I pretty well remember the time I went on, because I didn't go on right at the very beginning, but the Hart store fire was probably the first big fire that earliest fire department tried to put out. And Tony was very, very pregnant with Mark at that point, and we just happened to be going by. And I had not joined the fire department yet.
Okay.
And he was born on June the 8th, and I joined the department then right after that.
Okay.
But of course, every man in town and came to fight that fire, whether they were in the fire department or not.
Well, that's what prompted the forming of the official fire district.
It might have been the official fire district.
Yeah.
The result of those meetings was the official creation of the Sedona Oak Creek Volunteer Fire Department on April 7, 1957. Tom Frost, whose efforts had been instrumental in this achievement, was named the district's first fire chief. At this point, the district consisted of the chief, a secretary-treasurer, and 14 volunteers. Gradually, buildings to accommodate the fire department were built. A small two-bay fire station was built on Forest Road in what is known as Uptown.
In 1957, the majority of Sedona was located in Coconino County and therefore fell within the newly formed fire district. However, residents living across the line in Yavapai County found themselves without fire protection due to legal restrictions placed on the district. This situation was finally resolved when the Red Rock Fire District was created in October 1960.
Starting as a volunteer fire department, Sedona Fire District has gradually become a strong combination department, depending heavily on both volunteer and career members.
Ben Manier was the chief at that time, recruited me. He says, "You've been around here a long time, Larry, it's time you got active in something."
This was the Red Rock.
That was the Red Rock Fire
District.
District. Red Rock Fire District, right.
To the best of my recollection, it was in April of '73 when I came aboard. It was with, Larry was search and rescue before then. I don't know if we could call that an arm of what we call our technical rescue team now or not, but we probably made a lot more ambulance calls than we did calls for lost hunters, or because at that time Russ Pettit would say, well, we got to call search. If somebody was down in Slide Rock, we went down and carried them out on the backboard, or up, if they were in West Fork, we went up there and carried them back.
I became a volunteer because nobody else would do the job that had to be done. There were 2 fire departments at that point, and Red Rock Fire Department needed a secretary-treasurer. And nobody wanted to do it, and so they asked me, and I said, okay.
You know, they had a meeting at Don Willard's at his store there in 56. And Ed Black and I were there, and I think Blanchard and Etter were there, and before, in order to get it on the ballot that fall of 56, you know, to form the district over there.
It was kind of a family affair at the time between my mom and my dad, getting the apparatus to the right place at the right time.
Then they'd turn around and call other people just to get them going. Yeah. That was the dispatching system.
Dispatch, and they'd write it on chalkboards and manual sirens, and I remember all that growing up, and that's really what got me started and interested in it. So. And those, of course, were the days when they handed you a helmet and a pager and a coat and said, when this goes off, do something. You didn't have any clue what to do or anything else. It's just, go there. And of course, the town was a lot smaller. It was kind of easy to find the house on fire. It was the only one with the smoke showing at the time.
It didn't take long for the district to realize the importance of training, preparation, and equipment. Simply putting on a helmet and rushing to the scene wasn't quite enough.
There was no real training, formal training. We did at some point begin practicing a little bit on Thursday nights or something, but it was very minimal training. An awful lot of it was BS sessions. And
Ollie Simon, who had retired from California, came over here and taught me my first fire science class that I can remember. We had a fire science class, and it was, nozzles 101 or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was pretty basic.
I remember I took the first IMT class in the state of Arizona. As a matter of fact, I had the #2 certification.
Is that true?
And every Monday and every Wednesday evening, we drove up to Flagstaff Medical Center to take our training there. And it was a van, it was 8 people, and several of them still are here in town. Ian is still on the department. And as a matter of fact, Dan was in our class at that time, and he was a park ranger up on the Lake
Dan
Powell.
Wills. Dan Wills.
Yes, Dan Wills. He was in the same class. He was up at the Lake Powell at that time. And Ian was in the class, Larry Brooks was in the class, Don Winslow, Dixie Carlson, Betty Smith, Holly Knack, I don't even know if she's still in town, and a girl named Pat Evans.
Do you still have card #2?
No.
They changed.
No, they changed the computer system, which I didn't appreciate.
Well, we did get out and train. There was just no formal training. We pulled some hose and squirt some water, and practice driving the trucks. and operating the pumps, and that was pretty much it.
In my opinion, that's the best training you can do, is using the equipment, getting that line out,
Up and
off
down
that
the-
truck,
up
and
and
on
down
that
that.
fire right now.
The district's first vehicle, affectionately known as the Turtle, was a used 1944 Mack Hardy, an old Navy crash truck. As you can probably guess by the name Turtle, it wasn't the fastest thing on wheels. It lacked the power to climb the hills of Sedona, and because it could only carry 400 gallons of water and there were no hydrants, firefighting became a real challenge. If the Turtle ran out of water on a scene, the volunteer firefighters had to leave, fill the truck at the water fill station, and return to the fire. In those days, if they got back before the fire rekindled, they considered themselves really lucky.
Notifying the members of an emergency has certainly seen changes. We've gone from 3 or 4 phone numbers and a couple of strategically situated alarm buttons to the command conference circuit, to the red box, and finally to our current sophisticated 911 and CAD systems.
We had 3 master telephones. One was in Tom Frost's house, one was in my house, and one was at the bar, at the Birch Bar. I had that at the head of my bed for many years. And Tom Frost did, and Birch Bar, the 3 places. And we had to check with each other if we were going out of town to make sure somebody was going to stay in town. Of course, that's why we had one in the bar, because they were there all the time.
Well, you talk about the red box. My recollection of the red box, that was before we had the pagers, of course. And you used to just carry that thing around because you didn't want to miss a call because they were so few and far between. And I remember going into some shop in uptown Sedona, coming out to my car, and there was the red box with the red light lit, meaning a call had gone out, and
you'd
just
missed
being
it.
devastated,
You'd be devastated
that I had missed the one call that we would probably have there.
And that thing's as big as a briefcase.
Oh,
It's like a video camera case or something. You carry that thing around, it had a big antenna on it, and antenna turns, so if you laid it in the shopping basket, you could turn it the other way. And you'd be, buzzing up and down the aisles with that thing, and they're so loud.
But what's really ironic is that's still how we are woken up at Station 4 and 3, is with red boxes.
Yeah, they're still there.
They're still there. They're that
Those were brand new.
accurate.
When they handed me mine, it was brand new, because before that, they were using the telephone and the sirens. You have the sirens on top of posts around different parts of town, and use those, and the red boxes were brand new.
But when I lived in West Sedona, we had a neighbor who lived across the street in Traumarai Estates, on Traumarai Lane there, and the siren would go off, and he would walk down to the highway with his boots and his turnout coat, and he wouldn't know where the fire was, and I would come out and watch him and stand by him waiting for a fire truck, and if a fire truck came by, it would stop and pick him up and take him onto a fire, and if one didn't, after about 10 minutes, he'd just simply say goodbye, and then he'd walk back up the street.
On the nighttime calls, I lived about a block from the fire station. Tom Frost lived one house beyond me, and you lived about another block.
Yeah.
And if there was a nighttime call, I usually ran. I always ran to the fire station because it was just a block, and Tommy Frost would come in his car and almost run me down. Then Blanchard would come.
I can still see old Tommy Frost skidding into that ditch.
Yeah.
They couldn't get out.
In March 1963, Sedona received its first ambulance, a converted van called Big Bertha. It was donated by the Business and Professional Women's Club of Sedona and was the start of the Volunteer Firemen's Rescue Unit, now called EMS. Russ Pettit took a 3-day emergency medical training course in Prescott in November 1970 and became Sedona's first emergency medical technician, or EMT. He then trained the other rescue squad members and continued to teach EMT after it became a full college course.
Russ's wife, Georgia, joined the department in March 1971, 4 months after Russ became an EMT. This dynamic husband and wife team ran the rescue division for 11 years and helped build the EMS section into what it is today.
Well, Russ came out here leaving the post of disaster chairman for the state of Indiana, except for the little area up around Lake Michigan and the little area down around Louisville, Kentucky. And from the Red Cross, it looked like the only way we could do Red Cross, I was a gray lady, was to drive back and forth to Prescott, and that had no appeal whatsoever. And so got around to, somebody asked Russ if he'd like to be on the ambulance, and he took one run and said, I don't have anything to do with that. Not until there's some training. There was one very, very funny incident. I don't remember who was there, but before I came to Sedona, I had worked on neuropsychiatric wards, and we had gotten into people who didn't take the proper medicine or overdosed or became psychotic for one reason or another. And the hardest thing to learn, and the thing that I tried to get Russ to teach, was never turn your back on someone who's like that, because you never know what they're going to do. Well, guess who turned around to walk out and get a gurney, and the lady who was off balance at that point because of medication just picked up her foot and parked it right in Russ's fanny and shoved him. The ambulance personnel, all of us broke up.
As you can imagine, 40 years has presented a number of exciting and often dramatic emergency calls.
We had a chimney fire, and we went up to check the attic, and the scuttle hole was really small. And I remember we thought the fire was out, and I remember I couldn't even fit through the scuttle hole with my SCBA on. So I left the mask on, I threw the bottle up inside, and I believe it was Grant Smith, because he's probably the tallest guy at the time, boosted me up there. And I wrestled my air pack back on. It was kind of hot and smoky, and started working my way towards where the chimney fire was. And about that time, someone opened up the gable vent to give me some ventilation, and the attic took off. And as a firefighter, we've always trained, and classes we've taught, that if you're up there in the roof and you want to get out, you just hang on the rafters and you stomp on the sheetrock and drop down. And the worst you got is an 8-foot fall, and if you grab a rafter, you got a 2 or 3 foot fall. Well, I said, okay, that's thought ran through my mind. I remember scraping away the insulation only to find a solid wood 2x4 ceiling, or 2x3 ceiling nailed together, just a solid wood ceiling. And I'm up there with no line, knowing you can't get back out the scuttle hole because you just had to take your air pack to get up there. And Ian Cameron was pulling a line. I knew that was coming in behind me. And it's one of those things where today we hopefully wouldn't allow us to get that far without having the line there and the utilities secured and stuff like that. We'd let our guard down because the fire we thought was out. And that's the one time that really sticks out in my mind of a really close call where you really had the time up there to think, this may not work out the way I had planned.
Probably the most memorable incident that I can remember was the Shadowbrook fire behind Station 1 here. We were the first engine in on that scene. My crew got ready to go interior. I was engineer that night, and so as soon as I got the hose lines ready, I went and secured the utilities. Unbeknownst to all of us, I secured the utilities right before they went in the front door, and when I killed the power, it killed the devices that he had set up to basically burn the place down. They walked in the door and realized after that that something was wrong, and it's hard to say that if that slowed down their getting hurt or if it wouldn't have even been a factor, but just the fact that somebody was out there trying to purposely hurt us or other people really made an impact on me.
I think now when I look back on it, there was a fella, I can't remember his last name, I think his first name was Ray, and he was a builder here, and he sawed through with a skill saw, and it sawed through his femoral artery. And when we got the call, he was down in front of the fire station there on Forest Road, and some of his crew had brought him in, and they tied the tourniquet around his leg, and Stu Glenn and Ian Cameron and I were on that call. And we couldn't get an IV started because he'd almost bled out by the time we got him there. And I finally got an IV started on him, and we took off, and Stu and Ian was in the back, and I drove. And we had the police block off, the sheriff blocked off the canyon, and DPS picked me up at the airport, and I drove that ambulance from in front of Forest Road into in 30 minutes flat to Flagstaff Hospital.
The fire down at the furniture store.
Yeah, at the pizza place.
The woman had been in the drugstore to get some medication for her husband. She come out, got into her car, locked all the doors, and somehow or other that thing took off in reverse right across 179. And at that time they had a pizza parlor at the upper end of that building. And she went right through the front door with her car. Backwards.
Yeah.
The pizza place caught fire, and they couldn't get her out of the car because all the doors were locked.
He found this lady that lived in the ranch, and she was in a coma. I mean, she was unconscious, and she had been that way, they figure, maybe 3 days because he'd seen her before. Well, it was a real bad stormy weather, and we were smart enough to take the four-wheel drive unit because we knew we'd have to go through mud. We finally got to the lady, and the way I went was with the old IV boxes, like that, on the back of Mark's motorcycle, through a field of steer or cows. I'm serious, this is a true story. And I go, they aren't going to charge us, are they, Mark? They won't come after us, will they? And this is a real city girl we're looking at right here. And I'm now in a fenced area with these four-legged things. And he goes, no, don't worry about it. Besides, I can outrun them.
And they started up Oak Creek Canyon. Well, they got to a certain point in Oak Creek Canyon, and not all the way up, and all of a sudden it was evident that the young lady was going to deliver, so they pulled off this one spot of the road, which we know very well now at this point, and they delivered a bouncing little baby boy in the back of the ambulance, and he was able to help deliver, in fact clamped and cut the umbilical cord. By that point, the young lady at one point had said, I need you folks to know that if anything happens to me, I'm putting this baby up for adoption. Well, Annie had then whispered to Dan at one point, wouldn't that be something if this was our baby? Knowing, of course, there's no way that could possibly happen. The next thing I know, the phone is ringing at about 4 in the morning, and I wake up again and answer, and it's Annie going, how would you like a baby? No, you didn't load the baby into the ambulance and head back, did you? Well, it turned out that the young lady told Annie, she says, I think we were put in that ambulance for a reason. She says, and I want you to adopt this baby.
Over and over again, career and volunteer members alike met the challenge of helping their neighbors. Their commitment to excellence is obvious in their approach to the job. Emergency medical service providers and firefighters become immersed in their craft. It becomes a way of life.
I do enjoy the department a lot. It's meant a lot to me. It's mostly community service I enjoy the most. It really means a lot to be able to help people out there and know that you're not doing it for the dollar. You know, it seems like with my job and William Holman Construction, it's I'm doing it for the money. You know, I need the income like everybody else does, but this is a service to the community that I can do, and it's not based around the dollar, which is really a deep satisfaction of community giving.
I wouldn't trade my experiences. If I had to do over, I'd hold out for more money, though, I think.
When this district originated, it was volunteers alone who dedicated themselves to the cause. Over the years, as the community has grown, SFD has developed into a strong combination department, with everyone working as a team to assist the citizens of the community in their times of need.
We had a fire not too long ago, and the lady's house burned. It was a total loss, and we treated her and transported her, and I'd say 6 to 8 weeks later, maybe, she came in my office and came in and gave me a big hug, you know, thank you. And it just gave me chills all over. It was really kind of neat. And those are the most memorable ones. It's when you run into the person in the grocery store later, or at the post office, or in your travels around town, and they say, oh, I know you. You were at my house, or you helped my mom, or you helped me, and I really appreciate it. It makes every bit of it worthwhile. It makes getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning worthwhile.
Many members, past and present, have given their time, talent, and energy to the community and to the fire district. They are to be commended for their efforts.
Wasn't but a couple days, we got our first call. I didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing, of course, but we showed up anyways because the pager went off. I can remember distinctly Bill Pritchard Sr. in a panic yelling to me, "I need a hose clamp, I need a hose clamp." And of course, me being the mechanic that I am, I ran back to the engine looking for a hose clamp, which should have been a item about this big, you know, because we were using big diameter hose, and thinking I needed a screwdriver too to tighten it down. After running around the engine about 4 or 5 times and trying to find this hose clamp like it would look on a radiator hose, someone finally smacked me on the side of the head and said, "Dummy, this is what a hose clamp looks like." And that was probably the beginning of my career here at Sedona Fire.
And as a professional in the YMCA, it was part of my responsibility to recruit, train, and work with volunteers. And I feel very qualified to say that this particular fire district that I'm working for now has all very professional people involved in the skills of suppression and EMS. And they are a model for any other fire district or fire department throughout the country.
But the biggest thing on the fire department, as far as I'm concerned, has been great over the years is the communications. It just kept going up and up.
The past 40 years have seen immense changes, which have been particularly rapid in the last 10 years. As growth of both residents and visitors to the area literally seems to explode, SFD has to keep up with the pace, and they're doing it.